What's up, folks? I'm Odd, by the way, and the mail came. I got an art box. Thankfully, this time it's also not a blanket, but I'll get into that. The internet doesn't fully understand me, it seems, at least when it comes to like algorithmic stuff. So I don't often get ads that are like purely directed toward me. I think it's also because I live in a household with multiple very different people. But I did get an advertisement for this art kit, and I was curious about it specifically because it said adults, teenagers, and artists. It's from a brand called Colormore, and the whole list of the Amazon listing here, let's go through this, right? 175-piece deluxe art set with 2 drawing pads, acrylic paints, crayons, colored pencils, paint set and wooden case, professional art kit, art supplies for adults, teens, and artists, paint supplies. There was this big debacle, especially a couple years ago, of people specifically, like teen to my age artists talking about art kits and getting them as a kid and stuff like that, and like how whether or not that's a good gift or a bad gift. And the general consensus in most cases was like, it's not a great gift, and it really kind of depends on the quality of it, right? Because when a company tries to put something together for relatively cheap and tries to cover all of the bases, oftentimes they don't get any of them, and everything suffers for that sake. Mainly, I think, because these things are advertised toward children, so there's this idea of like not needing to be very complex or usable. But then in the same vein, as kind of a devil's advocate, it is nice to experiment with new art materials, especially if you're a young artist. A lot of people aren't going to immediately start with the medium that they're going to be using throughout any professional lives, or even in just if they're hobbyists or something like that, right? So it's nice to be able to start with something very broad and move to something smaller. Of course, that being said, it can also seem a little impersonal if the person that you're buying a gift for is someone who does have a very specific medium in mind. Like, I like experimenting with different art materials, but if a family member, like, came up to me and was like, hey, you're an artist, I got you this kind of crappy, like, kind of general art kit, I would be a little disappointed. Mainly it just feels like impersonal. It's more personal than, say, like a gift basket with some soaps in it or something like that, right? But it's still not quite knowing the person. Like, unless they say that they want to experiment with art supplies, maybe ask them directly what they like to work with, or if they would prefer having some things to experiment with overall. And that's not even taking into account the fact of what I said at the very beginning, which is that these art kits tend to suck. So what I'm curious about is, I picked this up for about $40, I want to say. I'll check the listing again when I'm editing, I'm sure. But yeah, it wasn't necessarily directly advertised toward children. It was advertised toward adults, and that's not something that I've often seen. So I'm curious to see what the quality of this is. And it's like, it's not an inexpensive, or it's not an inexpensive kit totally, but it's not a super expensive kit. I would put this like middle of the line, and a lot of I would say even some of the crappier kits probably cost around this amount. So it's interesting, and I'm curious to see whether or not that it's going to be kind of good, or kind of bad, or kind of mid, or very bad. That's why we're here today, because I've never used this before. I'm also a digital artist mainly. I'm sure that a lot of people are probably going to come to this from other parts of the internet, possibly looking at like an idea for a review for this. I don't normally do stuff like this. I am experienced in other forms of art, but not to the fullest degree that I am when it comes to digital art. So this is also going to be a little bit of a challenge for me. So hopefully I can give some nice and, I guess, relatively unbiased opinions on this particular art box. But I'm gonna get my phone out and I'm gonna unbox this with you guys. It has these little bumpers on either side that I haven't taken off yet. I don't totally know why. I just thought that they were kind of neat. And yes, it did in fact come with 2 separate pads, or just outside of the kit itself in the box when it was shipped. So you can see my light is glaring something fierce on it. but they gave us an acrylic pad, which is, yeah, it's definitely, you can kind of see on the phone. So there's a little bit of a canvas-like texture on it. It's very plasticky, though, and it's not particularly textured. It's interesting. It's like cardstock with like a little canvas overlay on top. So I'm curious to see how that'll work. And then there's just kind of a standard sketchbook, just a standard, it says heavyweight, smooth surface, same thing as the acrylics book. And this one is not quite as shiny. You know what this feels like? This feels kind of like the paper that we would print on when I was taking a printmaking class with my art classes. And yeah, it's very soft. It's actually not very thick, which, I mean, it's sketch paper, so that makes sense, but it's interesting to keep in mind, I guess. So it's definitely not going to be like, it says it's heavyweight, but I don't know if that it's going to be a good like marker paper. I'll have to see. But let's get this bad boy opened. It's almost the same color as my desk, actually. I got it in cherry. And yeah, I forgot to mention that there was initially a shipping debacle into which this didn't come, but in fact they sent me a bedspread and said it was one of the most like incredibly confusing deliveries that I've had. I haven't had much problems, knock on wood, with the delivery system overall for most things, and I order a lot of stuff online, so it was interesting to say the least to get something so egregiously not the thing that I ordered first. Mind my small desk space here. So we enter. Oh, and we got some pencils right off the bat. These are not marked, but they have the colors on them. As these, oh, they just fell out of the assortment. I was so confused. Oh wow, okay. So I think it goes you, then you, then you, then you? Because you're gray? Yeah. So these just fell out. My bad. These are all the colored pencils, which look like they've got some interesting color. They also look like they've been sharpened pretty well. They came pre-sharpened, which is nice. What's this? Is this sandpaper? Interesting. And the inside is plastic. Which, I mean, I came to expect with the organizers, right? And here's the little... Oh, this goes up here. It's marked for us. Eraser. It looks like a horror movie title. Coming this fall. Eraser. Okay, and it comes with this whole little guide. Okay. 1 to 50 page drawing pad. That's outside of the box. 1 to 24 page acrylic pad. We got that outside of the box. 3 to 8 wet palettes. So it comes... Or, sorry. Well palettes. I actually don't know what that is. Is that you? 3 to 8 well palettes, 24 watercolor cakes, 2 drawing pencils, 1 sharpener, 8 brushes, 1 sandpaper block, so it just says sandpaper block, 24 acrylic paints, 24 oil pastels, 24 color pencils, 1 wooden case, 1 art eraser, and 60 crayons. Now I'm curious because there is also a drawer here if this is where... No, it's where the acrylics are. Oh, wow. Okay, so this is where the acrylics are stored alongside the brushes. There's a little drawer here. It's super cute. And it appears as though it's made of actual wood. There is obviously like a little, there's like a vinyl cover on it. I forget what they're actually called. And this came out, and it's having trouble going back in. I might need to put down my phone for a second. There's a vinyl cover on it, so I was kind of worried that the inside might all be plastic, but it does appear to be wood. Give me 2 seconds so I get this back in the stupid box, if I can. And there's another drawer. That's where the crayons are. And yes, what we have in the next drawer down, this next little set of knobs, is all of our crayons. Look at all those. Ooh. Okay. When it comes to the sheer amount of things in this, at least, I will say I'm quite excited because this is huge. 175 pieces. That is insane. What did it mean when it said well palettes? Gosh, this smells like art supplies, I guess, at least. Yeah, I am going to, though, readjust, I think, my webcam, and we're going to try out some of these on the papers and see what they look like. All right, I got mostly everything set up, I think, rather arduously. Let's just get into it. I also brought out one of my watercolor brushes with the water preloaded into it. I'm sure that you could also use water and a brush, and I did get water, but that's mainly to clean out the acrylics, and I didn't want to, like, I don't know. I just didn't want to double up. So let me get, let's see, let's kind of work our way down with this, right? So the acrylics are probably going to be last. So yeah, first things up, I guess, are these pencils, which are HB and 2B. And let's just see how this sharpener works for them, and whether it's any good, and the eraser, I suppose, right? I do believe that 2B is basically what we expect out of pencils. I could be wrong. It's been a minute since I've worked with art pencils. Yeah, I was gonna say this sharpener isn't complaining too much, but it kind of is. Kind of isn't. It might just be the lead inside of the pencil that's not cooperating with me here. Okay. There's that on the smaller one. It looks much better. So I'll just keep going until that's sharp. That's a nice point. Okay, so the sharpener isn't too bad. You just gotta use the smaller one right off the bat. Let's get this open and test out our sketch paper that I may have already gotten. Oh, it's because I moved all the shavings aside. I already got graphite on it. Move this up here. Kind of get that in the center. So this is HB. And yeah, it kind of looks like this. It's pretty dark. And then 2B. Well, not 2B. Oh yeah, this is definitely a bit thicker and darker. I guess I should have tried to see if I could get this lighter. So you can kind of see the difference when they're just sort of lightly applied, which isn't all that much. And also see what they look like smudged, how easy it is. HB is still pretty light. 2B. They're about the same, but I would say the 2B is darker. You little Doug. Kind of see the precision here. I would say that they're not all that different. But yeah, the 2B is a little bit thicker, I think. Yeah, a little bit thicker overall. Now I'm gonna go like light, really light to dark with both of these and see how the eraser does. Get this art eraser, as they call it out, the horror film eraser. It's very small. Oh, is it a kneaded eraser? Kneadable erasers you can basically shape like clay to fit whatever nooks and crannies that you want to use them with. So that's pretty dope. And let's just see how that does. Let's get it kind of at a nice point. Let's see how that does with these pens. Kneadable erasers also aren't very solid, obviously. So it's a little bit harder to get things cleanly erased. It's not too bad. Yeah, also the issue with them is the fact that, you know what, this is probably, yeah, that's right, because I think you're supposed to clean off, I didn't think it was kneaded erasers, but you can clean off erasers with sandpaper. So that's probably what that sandpaper is for. Because we did that a lot in my art classes. Okay, so this is what it looks like. Not the best for, like, I probably would have preferred just a standard white eraser, but I guess everybody kind of has those on hand. It's just like, kneaded erasers have a very specific use case, and ugh, this one is very sticky. But it does work. Like, it doesn't not work. I have to shake my camera. It does pretty effectively erase. And this is always good for, like, if you have, like, remaining lines, or if you're making, like, say, a sketch and you just wanted to get rid of some of it, you can kind of press the kneaded eraser on top of it, and it'll make it lighter, so it's easier to get off. And you can see, like Silly Putty, it's transferred onto the kneaded eraser. Okay, so next up, I think we're going to go for the colored pencils, and I guess we're just going to swatch each one of them. And for posterity's sake, I'm going to change the paper. Crap, where did that other pencil go? We may be down. Oh, there it is. What's so weird about these supplies is that they're not branded, like, at all. And I don't think that these pencils even have color names. Yeah, no. They just kind of, as they fall out of my hand, they just kind of have, like, the relative color on the ends of them, but nothing, like, indicating what they are or where they come from. 24 colored pencils. Okay, so this is kind of what you get in, like, a standard pack, right? So let's just go down the bin. And just start with the rainbow. So I think, unless I'm blind, that this is red, and it looks very dusty. So I'm curious to see what the pigment looks like on this bad boy. I mean, it's not bad. It looks almost pink. Maybe you can layer it. So this is me pressing as hard as I can. I know it's tearing up the paper a little bit. So it's not very pigmented. You kind of look orange. So let's see. Yeah, it's more like a mustard yellow. This one's not bad. Really hard to see when it's any lighter than, like, pressing all the way down. The reason I called that mustard is because there's an even lighter yellow. It's definitely very light. But it's almost kind of more pigmented than the mustardy one. Green. What's weird is that the acrylic paints, I saw them, did have color names. So I guess you could kind of compare these to the paints and see what, like, colors they're supposed to be. And we're moving our way into the, ooh, I forgot a red orange. Whoops. I guess I can go in between these two. Broke. This paper doesn't feel very good either. Like, I'm not loving this paper. Let's see. And then, like, a purple. And anything else, I'll just cycle back through. And yeah, these, like, the little, like, straight up and down swatches, those are me pressing as hard as I can. This one, which I guess is supposed to kind of be like a burgundy. Or maybe it's just a darker red. Yeah, it looks a bit more like just kind of a scarlet. It's decently pigmented. It's more pigmented than the regular red. So I guess this red could be maybe like a red pink, but there's no way for me to tell because they're not labeled. So those are all the colors of the colored pencils. Except for the, oh yeah, the white. You can't really swatch white. Do I have anything nearby-ish that's relatively dark? One second. Here, I found some green construction paper, which is really almost about the same consistency. Let's test this white's opacity. Now, white, obviously, other than drawing on dark surfaces, is more of a blending color, so it's not going to be very opaque, I don't think. I wouldn't expect it to be. But this is almost like silvery. Yeah, it's not really showing up all that much. But it is for blending, usually, if these colors would blend. Unless you're, like I said, unless you're on a dark surface. Let's see how they kind of layer on top of each other, perhaps. Let's go for, like... which one do I like? I like this red. And... yellow. Shush. This guy. Yeah. So, sort of like... start coloring, right? And then we can kind of try and And you can see them on top of each other, so I guess that's nice. Okay, get another layer of red on there. No, it's pretty much kaput after that. This paper is so scratchy. Let me get better paper and see if maybe it's the sketchbook, because the sketchbook feels kind of icky. And the acrylic paper is definitely not going to take these because it's so slick. I can already tell. Go. Got some cardstock. Dropped a colored pencil. Yeesh. So, I mean, this paper doesn't have as much bite, but, well, these are definitely not very vibrant. They also kind of bleed. Are these water soluble? Could these be better watercolor pencils than pencils? To some degree, I guess. I wouldn't really recommend them for that. Yeah, this paper feels better, but these definitely do not on top of it. Crappy apple here. I'm gonna make you a red delicious because that's what you remind me of. Kind of basic and disappointing. Yeah. These aren't my favorite. They aren't very pigmented. But, like, they don't not draw. So, like, I feel like I've used shittier color pencils before. I could see myself maybe using these to sketch or something. I don't know. They do something that I've never seen colored pencils do, which is they kind of transfer. So they kind of, like, finger blend like a graphite pencil. But I don't think that that's a good thing. Like, I guess it could be a useful thing. But that's never what I've come to expect from a colored pencil. This one doesn't do it as much. But yeah, if you, like... There are, like... I guess, like, little, like, bits that come off that can be blended out. It's just weird. These are weird. And now I gotta go put them back. Alright. Next page of the sketchbook, we'll move on to some oil pastels. Now, I don't know much about oil pastels, but what I remember, they're supposed to be relatively, like, oily and glidey, right? Not necessarily a crayon, right? And, like... Yeah, okay. It's hard, and I don't feel like it's gonna transfer off onto my finger, so I'm not totally sure. I mean, these just feel kind of like maybe a bit glidier, thick crayons. Well, they definitely don't, like, layer up well. They don't play nice with themselves. Yeah, it feels about the same on the cardstock. I don't have much else to say about these because I don't know what I'm really looking for. Just kind of trying to get through all these colors. Here's black. And then white show up on anything. I mean, kind of. It does blend. Well, that's interesting. It does show up. Again, like the others, it takes some effort. This almost feels a bit greasier than the others. Which, I mean, it is a blending kind of color, so maybe that's the best way you could get use out of these things. It's just by blending them with white. Gosh, there's so much carnage going on here. Look at all those bits. See if I can kind of blend these two together. What does that look like? Okay, so it's a pretty, like, seamless blend here. So that's kind of nice. I, again, just have no clue what I'm looking for. I'm gonna look up oil pastels and see what they look like. So yeah, looking at some videos, it's kind of a yes and no, right? Like, these do blend pretty well. Listen, I don't want to be negative here, right? But, like, I don't know. I just feel like if you're maybe used to art, like if you're looking for pastels, obviously this probably isn't going to be what you're looking for. But like, they don't blend too badly. They do come off very easily. Like, they don't think they layer very much. But I could just be being too heavy-handed. But it's just so hard to get anything out of them otherwise. I guess if you were to like kind of try and build them up. 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 It's kind of working. Kind of. Oh, but they're not working very long. Yeah, I don't know. But I don't know. They feel like they're just kind of somewhere in a very uncomfortable reality between crayons and what I think I would expect of whale pastels. Alright, next up we got watercolors, and I guess my question is, do I try with the sketch pad? Or do I try with... I guess the answer is probably both. I was gonna ask, do I try with the kind of more suitable watercolor paper that I have? Because I have a theory. Though this paper says it's heavy body, it's not gonna do very well with watercolors. I'm also not the type... I've used watercolor pencils, and they're one of my favorite things to use, but I don't use cakes all that often, so forgive me if I do something wrong. Actually, let me look up a quick tutorial. Okay, I took a quick refresher course on how to use watercolors, so let's see if I can get this right. So I'm assuming that this probably isn't going to be good for prepping the paper with water first, but I'll try it. So there's my little puddle, or not a puddle, but a little glossy area. I'm not sure if you can see it. I move it in the light, maybe a little bit. It's slightly dark, right? But let's try it with our red first. Get some pigment up on the brush. Now I need to figure out where my water is. Okay. Oh yeah, that is tearing this paper up. So much for it being heavy-bodied. Look at that. Oof, that is not sexy. So that's kind of a fail. Let's just try it wet on dry, and then I'll get some watercolor paper to maybe swatch these, because I don't think that this is going to stand. It's not too bad. Okay. So, not a bad, like, application, I don't think. Anyway, yeah, let's try it with this and see if I can't. And I'll just go palette by palette as opposed to trying to go full rainbow order, because these are kind of different colors. Ooh, it's gray. That is not pigmented at all. Wow. I'm try and pick up more, I guess, and see. Maybe I just didn't get enough, but my brush is black. Let's try that again. Oh, that's slightly better. It's still not great, but it's better. Okay, yeah, that might have been my fault. Too little pigment. Okay, so that's one palette down. 2 more to go. Start with this guy, I guess. Really just have to get in there with these, like, just fully saturate your brush in color, it feels like. Otherwise it does that. Give that another try. Ooh, it's kind of milky, isn't it? I just can't tell if that's me or the watercolor. Maybe a little bit of both. I think I got this too wet. Another thing though, if you cover it in water, it just falls apart. That's probably not a good thing. Get this brown color in there. And then get another piece of paper. That's not bad, but again, these are kind of chunky. Like, I'm not really applying all that much pressure, but there's chunks coming off, which doesn't sit well with me. Right. Second of 3 water palettes down. 1 more to go. Tore that a little. Okay. I will say that I guess at the very least, if you're ever worried about like feeling too precious about a new art supply, right? I guess this could be one of the ways to go about that. So, I mean, as they're drying, some of them seem to be fading a little bit more. Some of them aren't. And maybe that's me. But I mean, they're not bad, I don't think, at least. I'm not a big watercolor person in terms of that, but like the color pigmentation is not terrible in my mind. Let me get like a watercolor booklet that I have and see if I can blend. Oh yeah, no wait. Let me see if I can get that onto the construction paper. Wait, my friend. This might just tear up this paper. So that's not the watercolor's fault. That's just construction paper. If that's the case. But hopefully I can get something out of it, I think. Right? Okay. Sorry, you got paper in your face. This looks like chalk, just straight up. Get some white on the brush. Get some white. Brush. Yeah. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure it's not really showing up. That's like, who is using milky white watercolor? That is definitely not pigmented, though. Watercolor folks, perhaps you can tell me. Oh, it's showing up a little bit now that it's drying. That's pretty cool. Okay, so now that it's drying, it is showing up. The watercolor folks, can you tell me what you use white for? Is it to lighten things up? Like, I assume you can layer it over the other colors if you have a strong enough paper. But, like, is white a very common color to be used in watercolor as opposed to other mediums? Because I know a lot of the times it can be used for blending or lightening or whatever, but I don't know about watercolor. But it does show up when it's dry. A little bit better. A little chalky. It's interesting. Let's give kind of primary looking palette here and take our red. Put that on. I didn't clean out my brush all the way. That was my bad. And just sort of mixy. That isn't bad, right? It's not too terrible. And then let's see what these look like on the more or less legit watercolor paper. Again, forgot to clean my brush. Professionalism. So yeah, if you have more or less like legitimate paper, I'd say these blend pretty well. They're not particularly pigmented, but they do. Look at that. Yeah, a nice orange there. There's 1,000 watercolor artists scream at me from the other side of the screen. Oh, that's not how you do it! I'm trying my best. But I think that this does work. They work as intended. I don't know if they're good. Again, this is a situation where I feel like they're probably better in my mind than the colored pencils are. Because at least they have more like pigment to them. So I would say like, and that's kind of usually the case is that the watercolor cakes in these things are surprisingly okay. I think it's just because they tend to hold pigment. Now as to how long they'll last, that's another story. I don't think that there's very much of them in here, but you probably get some good usage out of these, especially if it's your first time using them. Well, it leaves us with the acrylics and then the crayons if we're working our way down. I think this organizer is glued into the drawer, so you know what? In the drawer they shall stay. With their brushes. Now finding a way to organize these is going to be interesting. One second. I use an old Christmas plate as a palette. I'll clean it off, but it's seen better days. Yes, as I said, these are organized by color name, actually. So that's kind of nice. And I can put them in and back out. And they all have the little... they all have the little professional style pop openings. That's interesting. And these are definitely kind of like sample color sizes. These aren't going to get you through much, but maybe they'll be fun to play around with. There's definitely not a lot here. Rose. Just pink. Crimson red. Vermilion. Yellow orange. Medium yellow. Yellow lemon. Green pale. Sap green. Cobalt blue. Yeah, someone who uses way too much paint when I paint. This is not enough paint. It's cerulean blue. Ultramarine blue. Violet. Mauve. Burnt sienna. Burnt umber. Gold. Silver. Gray. Titanium white. Lamp black. I assume lamp oil black? But maybe that wasn't topical? Now, look at how little I sampled of each color. Like, those aren't very big dots, and look at how spent all the tubes look. Like, I don't know, man. Like, it makes some sense to me. But, like, also, it doesn't feel like enough to me to justify having these acrylics in here. If everything could have been made better by them not putting sample size acrylics into this, then maybe I'd leave them out. And then it also comes with a series of brushes, a wonky ass looking fan brush. It looks like a mustache. Nice kind of like square brush. A larger square brush that just fell into the gold. And the silver and the white. Whoops. An angle brush. Kind of a pointed end round brush. And kind of another flat brush. Okay. Let's clean this guy off. But let's get that acrylic pad out. And finally test it out. That's the unfortunate thing about these is that they don't have perforated ends. Like, especially the acrylic pad, it doesn't feel like you're going to be keeping that in the notebook, you know? So that's a little disappointing. Let's start. Red. Let's just go around the circle, I guess, right? This paper is interesting. What the hell? So, it's hard to describe this paper, for one, because it's just very glossy with a slight, like, I mean, you can kind of see it, that canvas texture beneath everything. These paints are, again, I guess a common complaint among the entire set, not very pigmented. They're not very opaque, but I mean, they're not terrible. They just take a minute to really layer up, don't they? Which is especially not great considering the fact that there's so little of them. You are using an entire tube of one of these paints for whatever you want to paint, or at least an amount that, like, you really wouldn't have an effective amount of paint left over if you used it in the way that you wanted to when you're painting. In my opinion. What's this? The crimson? I think this is the crimson. Ew. Ugh. I'm not happy with these. They work. Like, they're functional. They're not, like, I'm not loving them. And then, let's see if I have one of these that's dry, and I'll put the white on top of it. So you can see, here's all of the swatches together. Let's go for red. Red is very vibrant. That's to be expected. But the white is very, very transparent. But yeah, I guess that's to be expected with the white. I guess just overall, my expectations, my thoughts there obviously are there's too little of these paints. And I mean, maybe that's a, you know, that's a positive complaint to some degree. There's too little of it, but I don't know. When it comes to something that you might use to create like a whole project, that's a downside, like a big downside. So yeah, not sure how I feel about that. I'll try and do like little rankings near the end here, get a like a 1 to 10 rating, I think. But last, but certainly probably least, we have the crayons. I will say I do fall under that, I think, that American tendency. I am overpronouncing it currently because I'm aware of it. But I think I do tend to fall into the crayon area. So are you a crayon, or crayon person? I guess hearing myself say how I enunciated it, it was still very crayon. Do you pronounce the Y-O-N, or does it just kind of sound like cranberry? Hold on. It looks like there's 2 rows of the same colors. Yeah. So in this circumstance, they've given us multiples, which is good. And something that I would have appreciated in the paint. So, it looks like I only need to swatch, what, 12? And again, these are lacking any color names or any branding. They are just crayon. How? Hold on. How are these better than the oil pastels? Like, these are very glidey, actually. Hold on. What? Maybe I was wrong to judge you. You've exceeded my expectations, but you've also kind of met my typical expectations. Well, not totally even, because you do... I don't know, you do fatigue a little easily. You're not bad, though. And hardest I can press. Lightest I can go. gray in there. And there is a white. There are 2 white crayons, actually, that I will swatch on the handy dandy construction paper, which apparently seems to be the star of the show today. Oof. She does a bit better. Lightly. Which, you know, is probably for the best, but yeah. Ooh, very flaky. Not very opaque-y. Flaky, not opaque-y. So, closing thoughts on the box. So, if I were to rank everything on like a scale of 1 to 10, like 1 being terrible, 10 being exceeded expectations, 5 being about met expectations, graphite pencils, let's land on a solid 7. They're definitely pencils. There's not much you can do to go wrong with pencils, so they're fine. The eraser, a surprising 8. I didn't expect a kneaded eraser. It's not great, but it's different than I expected, and it's useful, so I'm down with that. I like that it came with sandpaper to possibly clean it off a little bit, although that doesn't really work as well with soft erasers. With colored pencils, like a 6. They're not bad. Maybe they met expectations, but like they went a little bit. They're not terrible. So yeah. Oil pastels, a questionable 4. I don't think that these work the way that they're supposed to, but they're not terrible. They're just, I don't know much about oil pastels. Maybe someone could educate me further, but like, I guess they're hard oil pastels, which might be different than like soft oil pastels, but overall, they feel like crayons and like still not good crayons. Like, as I mentioned, as I was sitting there commenting on the crayons themselves, I was like, you feel better than the oil pastels. And they kind of do. The oil pastels are not very smooth. They're a little chunky and they're a little hard to like move around on the paper. And that doesn't seem like what oil pastels should do, right? The watercolors, I'm gonna go for like an 8. The watercolors are not bad. I'm not a big user of watercolors, so I can't like fully say like any 10s or anything like that. And I mean, like, when it comes to watercolors, obviously there's probably better, but they definitely went a little bit beyond expectations for this type of kit. So 8. The acrylics, ooh, I want to say 5. Like, I want to say quality wise 6, but given the way that they were presented, like a 4, because there's so little of them. And that is like the issue with acrylic paints, is that you use a lot of them. I use a lot of them, and there's too little of them. If there'd been multiples of the same color, that'd be one thing, but that's been proven that they could do that, but instead they gave us very small containers, and like, that's not gonna last you all that long. That's not enough acrylic to do like basically anything other than like maybe a very small project. And like, there are some colors in there that you could not use. I would have liked, I think overall, to have like your base colors, yeah, like a couple reds, couple yellows, couple blues, and maybe the metallics just for fun, smaller, and then white and black. And then you can just mix the rest of the colors yourself. And I feel like that would allow for bigger containers and not so much like sitting there with like, yes, all this variety of color, but also like not enough paint for what you specifically need. That's not like, if you're getting a specific color of paint, it's because you want to use a lot of that color, in my experience. So like, the very large range of color is fun, but it's not useful. And if we're talking about something for like people who know how art works, we know how to mix colors. Like, give me really good basics. These acrylics aren't bad, but just give me good basics. Or leave them out of the kit altogether and make everything better. And then, of course, the crayons, 5. They're fine. They're fine crayons. They're not great. They're definitely, like, they're not Crayola quality. They're not like those, like, dollar store, like, candlesticks. They are quite smooth. Maybe you can bump them up to a 6. Nah, 5. 5, medium. Like, but yeah, they're smoother than, like, I think other art kits that I've used. Overall, I would say that this kit probably falls at about, like, a 5 final answer. And I know that that's incredibly middling, but that's kind of what this box is, and it's disappointing. So actually, yeah, maybe 4. I keep changing my answer. 5, middling answer. And I know that that's very average, but, like, overall, I think that you see, like obviously that degradation in quality with just the subpar materials, and for the price, I paid about $40. So I feel like individually you could get a whole bunch of way cheaper art supplies and just find some fun, cute way to put them together if you felt like it, and present it like that to a teenager or a kid. Because that feels a bit better to me. This, as a kit overall, if you had to get an art kit, it's definitely, I guess, a better one that I've seen. But it's not good. It's not good. It's just not good. And yeah, I don't think I could recommend it to that degree, just being particularly persnickety about it. Like, that being said, though, I am going to try, I think, to create something with all the things in here. So, I mean, I guess that's one thing, right? Is that it's usable. So that's where that kind of middling rating comes from it, right? Because everything is usable, sure. But is it decent? Is the question. And I think the answer is mostly no. Or yes, but there's too little of it. Or yes, but the paper is terrible, which it kind of is. Like, I appreciate the idea of having like medium come with the box, but it's not very good either. I guess I didn't even rate the things that came with it. The acrylic paneling or paper, whatever it's supposed to be, seems fine. It hasn't warped very much in its drying process, but it has a little bit. And it also doesn't come with perforated edges, so you have to cut it out if you wanted it to look anything presentable. And, like, overall, it definitely doesn't feel like canvas. And I've had, like, acrylic board notebooks like that before that seemed better. And that also definitely seems like something that you could pick up at, like, Michael's or a craft store for relatively inexpensive, as opposed to a whole canvas for children, for a child's art box, which is funny because this is labeled as for adults. I think that a kid would love this. An adult? A teenager? An artist? No. So, like, if you have a small child that wants to get their hands on every art material possible, again, still probably better off just getting, like, Crayola stuff, but, like, if they want to feel fancy, if they're a little bit older, maybe, and have, like, all their stuff organized, because the box is pretty nice. It's not, like, expensive wood by any means. It's got, like, a wrap over it, and it's, like, maybe, like, what is it, like, poplar, or, like, no, like, what am I thinking of, like, the board, it feels like, underneath there. But it's still a cute organization system, and it can keep everything kind of kept together. So overall, like, that for the $40 might be worth it in your eyes. If you're watching this for the perspective of, like, do I get this for my child? My, like, tweenager? Creative mid-range child, perhaps. And even then, you could probably just get them a nice box and a set of mid to decent art supplies and pay about the same amount. But if you want it all in one place, I think it's nice. Just make sure that they don't send you a bed sheet first like they did with me, which was crazy. I don't know why Amazon thought that was a decent replacement. That's like that one meme with the lady that like ordered tampons and got like a suggestion for a replacement of like white mushrooms, and it's like, it's the same price, it's the same color. Yeah, I hope that this video served some purpose to you. This might be rolling over whatever I tried to make with these materials overall. I'm probably gonna wait a little bit on that because it's currently a little late. But if you enjoyed this video, leave a like if you liked it. Let me know what you thought about these materials and their usefulness and stuff like that, whether or not you would buy this product. Beside that, subscribe if you want to see more like weird, cool art challengey stuff. And I will see y'all next time.